Wait a second.
How do you like that? Well, let's do them on. Parashat Beshalach. We all know that the Mon was manna from heaven, the bread of the angels. Yet for all of its wondrous product, the children of Israel were not satisfied with eating the Mon. Okay. So we know that Hashem took the children of Israel out of Egypt. They carried their bread on their shoulders, turned it to matzah. How long do you think that lasted? Not very long. So they ran out of food. And they complained to Hashem, we don't have any food, we don't have any water. And Hashem says, I will give you both. And he provided for them with this special food that fell every day, except Shabbos. On Friday, a double portion fell, so that they would have one for Shabbos. During the week, they could not leave it over. If they did leave it over for the next day, it turned to worms and spoiled. They only could pick one Omer La Gilgolas, one measure for every person. The Midrash tells us that for tzaddikim, it fell, the one was close to their, let's say, door to their tent. And for those who were not so righteous, it fell further away. But everybody had to go out and collect it. So you had to go out and collect it every single day, one omer for every person in the family. And you could not leave it over, nor would you find it on Shabbos. It did not fall on Shabbos.
How long did it take to collect?
I would say it depends. If you were my age, it would probably take a half hour. If you were young like you, it would probably take 10 minutes. It doesn't tell you how long it took to collect. But it wasn't much of a job. It was just a little bit of a, a chore. We'll see in a minute why that happened. Not in a minute, but ultimately. Now, the children of Israel complained about the Mon. And they complain about it. It's recorded in Parashat Beshalach. Wait, was it saying Parashat Beshalach, which is in Bamidbar? Let me read it to you. Okay, they complained when they were in the desert. And they said, we remember the fish that we used to eat in Egypt. Chinam, it was for free, after they toiled and slaved away. Okay, and then they remembered their kishuim, avatichim, their watermelon or melons, and the onions, and the garlic. Vata, they are eating the mon already. This is it way into the desert. Vata nafshenu yuvesha. Our souls are dried up. Ain kol. There's nothing here. Bilti el hamon einenu. The only thing we see is mon. And then it tells us what the mon looked like. It looked like a seed, and it was it was spread out, and they would take it, they would grind it, and then they would pound it, and then they would make it into flour. They would cook it, etc., etc., and they made ugot. And it was like a strip of oil, and it was sweet. And when the dew fell in the morning, or whatever, when they woke up, they found the mon was on top of the dew. So here they are, complaining about this mon, and telling everyone, or telling Moshe and complaining to Hashem ultimately, that we are sick and tired of this mon. Even though the mon was lechem haklokel. It was perfect bread. In other words, a perfect food. There was no waste. There was no having to go to the restroom to excrete it. It was no such thing as waste. The Midrash says it tasted like whatever they wanted it to taste, although the Torah says it had a specific taste. So the Midrash is sort of not in sync with what the Pasuk says, but that's not the first time.
How long were they eating it before they became so dissatisfied?
Okay, so here they are in the desert. They're about to go into the land of Israel, a couple weeks, maybe a month. But the Torah also tells us that for 40 years, God gave them the Manna, in order to afflict them and in order to test them. Haselech b'sorasi imlo. Will you go in my ways or not? Ze arboim shana. For 40 years, the Manna was a test. The test was a difference of opinion among the commentators. What was the test of the Manna? Rashi says the test of the Manna was, were they going to go out and collect it on Shabbos? Or were they going to save it for the next day and watch it turn into worms?
Wasn't it a test for gratitude also?
Yeah, we'll see. Hold on. That Rashi tells us what it was the test for. Test for, were they going to go out? Hasishmor mitzvosai. Will they listen to the commands of Hashem? Meaning, will they not go out on Shabbos to collect it? And would they not? And they would not leave it overnight. The Ramban is upset, or not upset, but he disagrees with Rashi. And he says, how can the Manna have been a test for 40 years? The Torah tells us the Manna was a test for 40 years. How many times can you go out and look for the Manna on Shabbos and come back empty-handed? 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you're dense, 4 weeks. If you're really suffering, 5 weeks. How many weeks can you go out looking for Manna and it's not there? Let's assume you can go out for 10 weeks. How do you go out for 40 years looking for the Manna on Shabbos? You got to be, you know what? To go out for 40 years looking for something that's not there, maybe you're a gold prospector, I don't know, but you're not going to find the Manna because it doesn't come on Shabbos. So it can't be a test for 40 years, says the Ramban. The Ramban says also, how many times can you leave it over and it spoils? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. After that, you don't leave it over anymore because it's going to spoil. You throw it out if you don't finish it, whatever it is. It doesn't pay to keep it overnight, hoping you'll have some the next day. So the Ramban disagrees very sharply with Rashi. And he says, you know what the test is? The test is you do not have what they call pas besalo. You know what pas besalo means? Bread in your pocket. It really means in your sal, your basket. What does that mean? That means every single day, einecha tuluyos hashemayma, you have to look up to heaven and hope that there will be Manna, because if there's no Manna, there's no food. So every day, you look up to heaven and you hope that Hashem will bless you again with Manna. That means you don't have security. It's not like you can go to your cabinet or your refrigerator and take out food, or go down to the store and buy food. You don't have anything. It rots at night, so you don't have it for the next day. Every day, you have to realize you're dependent on Hashem, and you have to look heavenwardly for your sustenance. That's the test every day. That's the test every day for 40 years.
You can say the same thing for the farmer and rain.
Yes. You can. Now, the Ramban said that's the Ramban's understanding. That is the test. Says the Orachaim, HaKadosh, they say, that can't be the test. Because how many times, in other words, you begin to take things for granted. For instance, we breathe every moment. Do we say, oh, thank God I breathed this moment. And then the next moment, thank God I breathe the next moment. Do you thank God consistently when you breathe all the time? Do you thank God if you get the food every single day? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, begin to take it for granted. That's number one. Number two, there's a whole generation that's born in the desert. They didn't have food anywhere else except through the Manna. They took it for granted. They got up in the morning when they were 1 year old, 10 years old, 15, 20. Whenever they got up, it was there for them as food. How much time can you be in awe and look to heaven and say, oh, I can't wait till when I get my Manna, when you begin to take it for granted over so many years. So therefore the Or HaChaim disagrees with the Ramban. And the Or HaChaim says, you know what the test of the mon is? The test of the mon is, what do you do with your free time? You don't have to clear the fields. You don't have to plow. You don't have to seed. You don't have to water. You don't have to weed. You don't have to harvest. You don't have to wait for it to grow. You got a lot of free time on your hands. That's the test of the mon. What will the Jewish nation, what will the people do with all that free time? Will they study the Torah that they were recently given? Will they do kindnesses one to the other? Will they help the community? Will they do all kinds of things that they could do mitzvot with all of that free time that they don't have to be farmers? They don't have to work for fields. So that's what the Or HaChaim says is the test of the mon. The problem with that is, what's more precious than food in the desert? Water. They didn't have to dig for water. They didn't have to prospect for water. They didn't have to look, where are we going to get water from? And if they had to dig for water and had to prospect for water, that would have been much more anxiety-filled than looking for food, because water is the first need, food is a secondary need. So according to the Ramban, if the test was what did they do with their free time, the test should have been about the mayim, the be'er mayim, the well of water that miraculously accompanied the children of Israel throughout their sojourn in the desert until they got to the borders of Eretz Israel. That should have been the test. And the Torah should have consistently said, the test was the be'er mayim, the well water that accompanied them, that they've had drinking water available to them. So what is the pshat? All of these pshatim that we have studied have problems with them. So I want to suggest another pshat. This pshat is, why do you eat? You know, we eat, of course, eat is like the benzene, the gas that fuels the body. It keeps us going. So why do we eat? Do we eat to to satisfy our palates? We love that succulent steak, that hamburger, that cheswas. You like fish? You like fish? What?
Herring.
Herring. You like herring? Do we eat because we like the herring and we can't wait to taste it? Or do we eat because we want to replenish our body? The fuel that keeps us going is food. So we eat food in order to keep ourselves healthy and strong and available to do mitzvahs. So what is the point when we eat? What's our concentration when we eat? What's our thought? Do we eat because we love the food? Or do we eat because we want to be strong and healthy to serve Hashem?
Both.
So if you eat to serve Hashem, the mon is perfect food. It had no waste. It didn't give you heartburn. There was nothing wrong with eating the mon every single day because it was the most healthy. Again, it was food from heaven. There was nothing healthier. So if you ate because you wanted to serve Hashem, the mon was perfect. But if you ate because you want to satisfy your gluttonous palate, and I know,
The taste?
if you ate because you're hungry because you need to eat because you need to serve Hashem, or you're hungry because you can't wait to eat that steak. Okay, excuse me?
Taste.
Okay, we'll see.
God give us taste for
Right.
some reason.
Good. So we said that before, we said the Midrash said the mon tasted like whatever we wanted. So what was wrong with the mon? It tastes, if we believe that Midrash that it tasted like whatever we wanted, and if we believe that it was there every single day, and if we believe there was no waste, what's wrong with eating the mon? It's the perfect food. Elamai, that means but only, we eat because we want to satisfy our palate. We're gluttonous. We have appetite, and it's luscious. It looks good. It tastes good. Then we have a problem with the mon. What's the problem with the mon? It's the same presentation every single day. You ever go to a fancy chasana or wherever dinner, and you watch how they drizzle stuff around the plate. Then they put a little flour in the plate, and they put the portion. They're always so small because they have all this other junk around it. But anyway, the portion is here in the middle of the plate, and it looks so beautiful because presentation is part of the allure of eating. Fact is, our Chachamim tell us that Hadlakas Neris on Shabbos, and one of the reasons why we are instructed to light candles at our Shabbos for the Shabbos table is so that we can see the food. Because if you eat in the dark, you don't get the same geschmack. You know what geschmack means? You don't get the same the good taste of the food because you don't see it. Part of enjoying food is to be able to see the food. So if you get the same presentation day in, day out, 40 years, nafshenu kotza b'lechem haklokel. Our souls became nafshenu yavesha. We become disgusted. It can't every day the same thing, same presentation. It always looks the same. It's always gooey and mushy. It's always this way. You get tired of it. And that's what they complained about because they weren't eating l'shem shamayim. You eat l'shem shamayim, doesn't make a difference what the food looks like. It makes a difference if it's healthy and it gives you strength and it energizes you, then it's perfect food. So the test of the mon was, what is the reason we eat? Do we eat because we want to be avodim to Hashem? We want to serve Hashem in the best and the most maximum way. The mon was the maximum food. It was a super food. You want to eat because you can't wait to like a schmuck steak or whatever, French fries, whatever you eat, pizza, whatever it is, herring. You then eat because you're a glutton. You're not eating l'shem shamayim. You're eating because you enjoy it. And that's the case.
Couldn't they have eaten in different ways, different times, different groups of people?
Whatever they could have done, they didn't do because they complained. Okay? What?
In Bereshit, it says many times, Vayar Kitov.
That's right.
So the seeing is important at the end.
Of course it is. It's important if you sublimate your taiva, your gluttonous lust, your desire.
But they were right.
They were right but not if you eat l'shem shamayim. You don't get tired of something that is very, very healthy. For instance, my wife eats almost everything she eats is healthy. So I have a vision of Gan Eden. And I tell my wife, you know what your Gan Eden is going to be? A beach chair in front of a fruit stand. And you'll sit there and you'll just derive pleasure from all the healthy fruits and the healthy vegetables. And me, I'm not such a tzaddikus, I'm not a tzaddik, and that won't help me. I mean, I need something more. Probably something like a grill bar or something like that. But anyway, what I say is that if you eat l'shem shamayim and you only want to eat healthy because you want to, preserve your body, have strength, not get sick, not have heartburn, not have, loose bowel movement, you eat it healthy. Healthy is to eat mon. The maximum health food is mon. And therefore, it became a test for the 40 years that the Jews were in the desert.
Rashi says, if I remember well, if you don't have bread in a meal, you will never be satiated.
Okay, well, the mon was satiating. They didn't complain they weren't full. They complained that they're tired of looking at it.
Some people live to eat, and some people eat to live.
That's it. Ari, you're right. Ari.
They complained only after 40 years.
No, they complained before the 40 years
time.
ago. But the Torah tells us that it was a test for 40 years. They complained at one point, they had slav twice, they got meat, and they complained about this.
All of that was against the man.
Yeah, they were against the mon. So you have all of these reasons why they sinned when they complained about the mon. And I'm suggesting that the sin of the mon was that they didn't appreciate that it was heavenly bread that was utmost healthy food. And they got tired of the presentation. So that was
this is the test of unlimited supply. It's like the obverse of economics. Economics is based on scarcity.
Well,
This is not the issue here.
price is based on scarcity.
What?
Price is based on scarcity.
No.
But not eating is not based on scarcity, but price is based on scarcity. In other words, that's a market-driven factor.
But it seems to me it's lack of gratitude.
Well, of course, it's lack of gratitude. But what are they up to? What is the focal point of their lack of gratitude? Is it because that they? I say it's because their presentation. There was no good presentation.
Didn't human nature have a streak of rebellion?
Well, I don't want to get into that. That's for your Tanya class. Okay. Now I want to examine another aspect of the Manna. Let me find the place. It's in Beshalach. There are three problems with Manna. What are the three problems with the Manna? God says, and this is already in Parashat Zion, that is chapter 16 in Chumash Shemos. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, and God says to Moshe, Hineni mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. I'm going to rain down upon you bread from heaven. And you'll go out and you'll collect it.
Okay.
Now, what's the problem with getting bread from heaven and not having to toil for it, not having to work or cultivate land? What is the problem? There are three problems that could arise. Number one, you don't appreciate the product. If I don't eat it today, I'll get it again tomorrow. If I don't eat it tomorrow, I'll get it the next day. I can last a day or two without food, get it the third day. I don't have any appreciation for the product because it's constantly coming, it's constantly being handed to me. That's one problem. I lose the appreciation for the product itself. If I waste it, nicht azoi gefällig. You know what that means?
Unlimited supply.
Yeah, nicht azoi gefällig. It's not so bad. I wasted it, so what? Get it tomorrow again. You lose appreciation for the product. Number two, you laze away the day. I don't have to get up early in the morning. I'll get up, I'll get my manna, I'll go this, I'll go that. I like to sleep. They say children at risk, unfortunately, they sleep till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They stay up till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Video games.
Whatever, video games, chatting, whatever else they do, whatever it is they do. But the point is they lose the appreciation of time. Day means nothing, night means nothing. It all meshes and blends into one. They can get up at 3 o'clock. They can go to sleep at 4 o'clock. It's all time loses. You lose your appreciation for time. So you lose your appreciation for the product. You lose appreciation for time. And you lose appreciation for work. I don't have to work. It's given to me on a silver platter. Every day it's there. I don't have to work. I don't have to stress. I don't even have to exercise. I just do, goodbye. Okay, so we have three problems that the Manna can cause. Now, once upon a time, there was a blind scholar. I think he lived around the end of at the end of the 1700s, turning into the 1800s. And he could not see, so he could not read. But he developed a skill of listening to the Torah. People would read it to him, and he would pick up nuances just by listening to the words. He was extremely smart.
Great memory.
Very great memory. And he was extremely attentive to the words of the Torah. And he proposed a key, K-E-Y, of understanding the Torah. And the key was what he called the 7 code. In various chapters or portions of the Torah picks a word and repeats it for 7 times. And his theory, and it's borne out now all over the place, people are using this 7 code, in all the Parshanim are using this, all you see it all over. Anytime somebody wants to say a Kiddush, they not anytime, but many times, they focus on the 7 code. They say this word is a key word that's repeated 7 times or multiples of 7 times or at least 7 times. And when that happens, the Torah is telling us, of course, that's Hashem, is telling us a theme. Sometimes it's a sub-theme, sometimes it's a major theme that attaches to that section of the Torah where the word is repeated 7 times. So in the Parsha of the Manna, which I told you before is Parashat Beshalach, chapter 16, it begins with Pasuk Dalid, and it goes on till, let's see, it goes on to 28. So it's 24 psukim. In these 24 psukim, there are 3 7 codes. 3 7 codes. We'll talk about them. The 3 7 codes are 1 boker, 2 laktu, 3 omer.
Each of them repeated 7 times.
Each of them repeated 7 times. Except for omer, it's repeated only 6 times. But we'll talk about that. So let's take the first one, boker. Boker, ba boker. You laze away the day. You get up in the afternoon. V'cham hashemesh v'names. The sun will shine on the man and it will melt it. So the first thing the Torah Hashem did when he gave us the man is teach us you cannot laze away the day. You can't sleep till 3 o'clock in the afternoon because you have nothing to do. And then wake up and expect to find the man. You sleep away your day. You don't get up early in the morning. Goodbye, Charlie. There's no man. It melted. The next 7 code is liktu. V'laktu v'yilkatu. Look, 7 times the word collected. Go out and collect the man. You lose your initiative for doing anything. You laze away and you don't want to make any effort. You'll not get the man. It will not come into your table. It will not cook itself. You have to do it. You have to work it. You have to pound it. You have to grind it. You have to bake it. You have to boil it. You have to cook it. Whatever you're going to do, you need to make an effort in order to eat the man. No effort, no man. You don't go out and collect it, it'll melt away and you won't be able to have it. So there's an emphasis of the Torah on laktu. Go out and collect it, prepare it, get it ready, because if you don't, it will not be available. So that was the second problem that the man created. The first one was you'll laze away the day. The second one is you'll lose initiative for doing anything. No, you must do something. The third, yes.
The first one?
The first one was baboker, baboker, baboker. V'cham hashemesh v'names. If you don't get up in the morning and collect the man, it'll melt away and it won't be there. So it taught us that the people of Israel of the desert, they had to get up in the morning. They can't sleep till 3 o'clock in the afternoon or even 1 o'clock. Okay. The second thing we just said was the laktu. Human being must produce an initiative. He must do something in order to benefit from the man. And the third thing is omer, 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 omer. There's a measure that you get. And if you don't, and if you try to take more, when you go to your cupboard to take it out or whatever, it won't be there. Every person got exactly how much they needed. And you couldn't take more and you couldn't hoard it overnight because there had to be an appreciation for the product. God, Hashem, did not want us to lose appreciation for the product, and therefore he limited its availability. He limited its time, and in a time that if you don't take care of it, don't use it right away or within 1 day, it's gone. But since the man did not come on Shabbos, it only came 6 days a week, Omer is only repeated 6 times. So whereas laktu is 7 times, boker is really 8 times because one time it says baboker, baboker. But it means in the morning. What was that, a cat? Okay. So now we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, knows all of our failures and all of what's going to happen. he instilled in the Mon 3 factors to make sure that we don't idle away the day, we don't lose initiative, and we don't lose appreciation for the product. All that is buried in the 7 code in Parashat Beshalach. Okay.
But water was for free.
Excuse me?
Water was for free.
Water was for free until, the story by Riva, where the children of Israel, the Manna, whatever, the water stopped, and Moshe had struck the stone. And we'll get to that when we get further on in Parshas, in the Parshas of the Torah. And did he strike the stone? There's a big machlokus over there too as to what the sin was by the stone. Rashi says famously that he hit the stone. We will see that that's going to be a major problem with Rashi's pshat, and the Barbanel brings 10 other maforshim that try to explain what was the sin by the stone. We're not up to that yet. We're still in Shemos. Okay.
I mean, it's natural people that work for things appreciate it. I mean,
That's right. It's a very famous thing that is said. There's only one thing a person can do for 50 years. Work. You can work for 50 years. Hopefully you can retire earlier, but ultimately, from 20 to 70, 65, whatever it is, till you get Social Security. I don't know, how old is it here? You start getting Bituach with me, whatever it is. You work, and you get up every day and you go to work. It's amazing.
67
67.
for men, 63 for women.
Okay. So that's the point. There's a, it says, Sheshis Yom Tavot. 6 days shall you work, Uvayom HaShvi Shabbos Hashem Elokecha, and on the 7th day is a day of rest. There's a famous joke that is said in Lakewood. You know what Lakewood is? Okay, that's where they sit and learn a whole day. So, there's a Midrash that says that when before HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah, he went around and he offered it to Yishmael, to the Muslims, whatever Yishmael means. And he offered it to Edom, and he offered it to all the nations, and everyone said, what's written in it? And some said it says, don't kill, don't steal, don't this. Everything they rejected, too difficult for us. When they came to Lakewood, they said, what's it written in the Torah? So Hashem says, 6 days shall we work, and on the 7th day you saw us. Nobody works in Lakewood. So they rejected it. It's a joke. All right. Anyway. Excuse me?
Say that here too. And
Okay, you can say it here too. Yeah.
It's on the video.
Sure. What?
It's on the video.
Okay.
There's a joke about we'll take 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of Parashat Beshalach, there's a very famous story where Amalek comes and attacks the children of Israel. Vayilochem im Yisrael b'Refidim. And Amalek attacks the Jewish people in a place called Refidim. Rashi says why was the place called Refidim, and why, more importantly, was Amalek able to attack the Bnei Israel? Shurirofu Yideyam min Torah. They were lax in the study of Torah, and therefore they were vulnerable to the attack of Amalek. Vayomer Moshe el Yehoshua. And Moshe says to Yehoshua, B'char lanu hanashim, pick men that say hilochem ba'Amalek mochor, and go out and fight Amalek mochor. Tomorrow, gather an army of men from amongst the children of Israel, and then go wage war in Amalek. The Gemara says, B'char lanu, choose for us. Moshe telling Yoshua, choose for us men and go fight Amalek. The Gemara says from B'char lanu, from the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Yoshua, B'char lanu, choose for us, he should have said, basically, choose men. What's this for us? So the Gemara says from Mikan, that a teacher has to afford respect to a student. After all, Yoshua ben Nun, as well as all of Israel, were students of Moshe Rabbeinu. Instead of Moshe Rabbeinu giving him a short, curt order, go choose men and go fight, he says, choose for us, including himself and Yoshua in this collective for us. Says the Gemara, from here we understand that a Rebbe has to give respect to his students. There's a famous explanation of this from Rav Hutner Zatzal, who was the Rosh Yeshiva in Berlin in the United States, although he studied here in Israel too. And he came at the end of his life to Israel. Says Rav Hutner, why in the context of the battle against Amalek do the Chazal or the Torah choose to teach us to respect students? Pick some other place in the middle of Shema, where we learn about V'dibarta, you should speak in words of Torah. That's where the mitzvah of Talmud Torah emanates from. What is this in the middle of a battle with Amalek? It's teaching us that a Rebbe should have respect for his students. It's sort of out of context. What's it doing here? Says Rav Hutner, what was Amalek? Amalek attacked us b'refidin, when we were rafu yidenu min Torah, where we were lax in the study of Torah. Said Rav Hutner, when we are lax, in that moment, that's when the Yetzer Hara strikes and tries to say to the Rebbe, be haughty, be arrogant. You're the teacher, you're the master, you're the top dog. In that very moment, when it could be that the teacher, the Rebbe, is thinks of too much of himself, the Torah tells us that's where Amalek's going to attack, and that's where the Torah instructs us to give respect to your students. From this,
Wasn't the first attack, though, on leaving the seed reeds?
no, this is Amalek. This is the right.
But isn't that where Amalek was waiting for us?
No, they came after Kriyas Yamsuf, right? The Sea of the Reeds. And after the Mon came, and that's it says, Vayovo Amalek. I'm reading from this parsha. This parsha is the parsha right after, this is the parsha of Oz Yoshir. Here's the song of the sea. This is the events. This is the chronology. The song of the sea after the army of Egypt drowned, and then they complained that they didn't have food to eat. They're on dry land. They're beginning their journey into the desert. They don't have any food. Like I said before, they had the matzah that they took out and that quickly depleted. Now they don't have any food. They complained about not having food. Hashem says to Moshe, don't worry, I'm going to rain down food from heaven, and they're going to be able to have the man. The next thing it tells us is they didn't have, and Amalek comes.
Didn't they say, Ayesh Hashem B'kirbe, no?
Yeah, that's when they said, no, what did they say? Okay. They were thirsty. By the way, it's interesting. They point out that here, when they complained about not having water at the beginning of the trip in the desert, Hashem doesn't get angry at them. Why? Because, it's expected. Imagine now, we always count time, people say, I've heard this many times, oh, how could they complain? Hashem gave them 10 miracles in the plagues, and then he split the sea, and then he saved them. What are they complaining about? How can they complain against Hashem?
You need water?
That's a very, very silly question. Why? You got old men. You got old women. You got little babies crying because they're thirsty. You got children screaming at their parents that they're hungry and thirsty. You would imagine, we think we're all, adults, and we're all men, and we're all strong, and we all should have faith in Hashem, but the people, the women, the old men, the children, the infants, everybody is crying because they don't have food and they don't have water. It's a mass complaint. And Hashem says, I understand that. So he tells Moshe, he doesn't get angry at Klal Yisrael at the beginning of the trip when they don't have water. Later on, he gets angry because now, later on, they had the Be'er Mayim accompanying them. They had the Mun. They had all kinds of, they saw that God was protecting them and taking them through the harsh conditions of the desert. And at that point, God expected better. Okay. So anyway, that's what Rav Hutner says. At this point, the Torah chooses to teach us the crucial thing that a Rebbe should have respect for his students. Why? Because that's the connection. There's two Torahs. There's the Torah Shabbat, the written Torah, and there's the oral Torah. The oral Torah is transmitted from Rebbe to student. Student becomes a Rebbe. He passes it on to his students. In other words, there's a chain that goes all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. That chain has to be strong. And if the Rebbe is disrespectful to his students, the chain, if it's not broken, is extremely weak. The students begin to resent the Rebbe. And if that happens, the transmission of the Torah is in danger. And that's what Amalek represents, the challenge to the transmission of the Torah. That's why they picked to attack in Rephidim, where the Jews were lax in the study of Torah. Okay. Now we get to Parshas Yisro. Did I discuss Parshas Yisro with you?
We started.
We did?
We did start.
Okay, so we'll start over because I don't remember where we were up to. You know why I get confused where we're up to and what we've done? Because this is not the only class I teach. And as you see, I don't have notes. And I just do this contemporaneously from my studies. And I forget what I said to this class or what I said to that class or what I said to the third class. So I don't remember where we're up to. So we will start Yisro. And we will talk about Parshas Yisro. The first question is, Parshas Yisro, which begins with chapter 18 in Chumash Shemos, Yud Ches, is the parsha in which the Ten Commandments, or the Aseres HaDvarim, I don't like to say Ten Commandments. You know why? Because there are 14 mitzvahs in the Aseres HaDvarim, the 10 statements. So when you call it the Ten Commandments, that's a misnomer. It's 14 mitzvahs, it's 14 commandments, which are contained in 10 statements. Okay. That parsha, Parshas Yisro, is the parsha of the Aseres HaDibros. Is it not strange that it's named after a Gentile? Couldn't you? Well, so we can say, you know why? Because that's what Hashem said by Yishma Yisro. It's the first words of the parsha, so therefore it's named Yisro. But Hashem knows what we are going to do. And so Hashem ordered the word, verbiage of the Torah. Everything is the word of Hashem, word for word. So why did Hashem put the beginning of this parsha so that we would name it after a Gentile? It's like it's almost incongruent. You know, here we're talking about the Torah. And even when we talk about the Torah, we have certain mitzvahs. You can, you know, it's very interesting. The Rambam holds that Christianity is idolatry. The famous Rambam, he says that Islam is not idolatry. In his famous epistle to the people of Taiman, Igeris Taiman, the Rambam says, you know, there was a Chacham in Baghdad who said when the Muslims came marauding through Jewish communities and they said, either you say Allah is God and Muhammad is his prophet, or we kill you. And that's where they lined up all the Jews in every community and they say, either you make this proclamation or you're dead. And so many Jews chose to make the proclamation. And they said, Allah is great and Muhammad is his prophet, or Allah is God and Muhammad is his prophet. Now they left. They went from community to community and they left. After they left, these Jews reverted to Judaism, or actually they never abandoned Judaism. They just made that one statement in public. And there were members of the community who didn't make that statement. Either they hid or they were beaten, whatever it was. And they presented a question to the Chacham from Baghdad. Now, the Chacham from Baghdad was a leader of the communities. The Chacham, he was a Sephardi Chacham, and he was sort of the leader of the communities of Taiman, of Yemen, and other Arabian communities. And he said, if Jews made that statement, it's like they converted to Islam and they are no longer entitled to any honors in shul. They should really be banned from shul. They are considered like converts to another faith. And so the people of Yemen, Taiman, appealed this decision or this statement, this halachic statement, and they appealed it to the Rambam. Rambam was then in Fosnet, which is what we might say is a suburb of Cairo, and he was a great chacham, but he was a physician. And even though he was the spiritual leader of his community, he also was a doctor, a physician for the, what's it called? The head of the caliph.
Who was it?
Maimonides, the Rambam.
Yeah, but who said that?
The Chacham from Baghdad. He remains unnamed because
He's the one
the
who said.
Rambam's going to quote him in the Igeres Taman, in the epistle that he writes, the letter he writes to the people of Taman, who appealed to him because this Chacham said a majority of the Taimani Jews were no longer Jewish.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so the Rambam then said that the faith of Islam is not Avodah Zarah, because they believe also in one God, and therefore if you proclaim God is God, God is God. And if that Muhammad's a prophet, that's not apostasy. That's not anything, it's wrong, but it's not terrible. It's not to the point where you have to give your life up for that. So therefore the Rambam held that the people of Taman were truly Jews, even if they made that statement. And because of this, the Jews of Taman always follow the halacha of the Rambam. They adored the Rambam. He gave them back their life, their spiritual life, and therefore, they hold like their minhagim, their halach is always based on the Rambam.
But is Allah is God the same God as God?
Yeah, it's the same. There's only one God. They believe in one God. We believe in one God. It's the same God. They
You
call.
think it's the same God?
Well, who knows?
Because they're so dark.
Okay, well, they're totally ignorant. Let's put it that way. But okay, they don't understand the spiritual nature of Hashem. They think you can murder in His name. They think you can rape in His name. They think you can have 70 wives in His name. They have all kinds of crazy concepts of God, but it's one God. Okay, how did we get into this?
Man.
No, Yisro. Okay, so Yisro is a Gentile. Okay, so we said.
But we weren't really Jews standing at
Okay, but still, he wasn't a Hebrew. He wasn't an Ivri.
Right.
He wasn't from our people. What you're saying, Aryeh, is 100% true. And this leads us to another issue. When did Yisro arrive? At the camp of the Jews in the desert. So Rashi famously tells us that Yisro came, because it says, Vayishma Yisro, Ma Shmua Shoma Uba. What did Yisro hear and come? He heard of Milchemes Amalek, the battle against Amalek, where Yoshua defeats Amalek. And he also heard Kriyas Yamsuf. He heard about the splitting of the sea, which means he heard the whole story of the Exodus. But he did not hear Matan Torah. He did not hear the story of God speaking to the people from the mountain. And therefore, Rashi says Yisro came after Matan Torah. Okay, at Matan Torah, he was there because he came after. No, I'm sorry, he came before Matan Torah because he didn't hear about it. Had he come afterwards, he would have heard it. So he did not hear about it because he came before Matan Torah. As a result, at Matan Torah, he joined the people of Israel and converted together with all of the Jewish people, who then entered into the covenant of the nation of Israel, where Hashem says, today I have chosen you as my people, and you have chosen me as your God. And we entered into a treaty, a bris with Hashem. Okay. By the way, we said Nasa v'nishma. We said we will do and we will hear. Before we heard the commandments of the Torah, we committed to their observance.
So Yisro,
Wow. So now the question is,
Yisro has to hear and learn from the Jew.
well,
That's our
Yisro
job to
was
the
there.
non-Jew.
Yisro was there. He heard it the same as the Jews heard it. He was at the. Hello? שלום, אני עכשיו באמצע שיעור, אני לא יכול לענות. תודה, שלום וברכה.
Kurz und scharf.
What?
Kurz und
Yeah,
scharf.
okay. So the question is, the Midrash says, Kof aleim har kagigas. That God suspended the mountain over the Jewish people. And the Midrash goes on to say, Hashem says to the Jewish people, if you accept my Torah, good. And if not, I'm going to bury you under this mountain. Well, we said we'll do it and we'll observe it even before we heard it. How does that jive with this mountain over the people and sort of forcing us to accept the Torah?
What more do you-
Was it voluntary or was it compelled? Yes? That's an oxymoron. You know what that means?
שבעל
A contradiction. So Chazal will tell us one is the Torah Shabbat and one is the Torah Shabbal Peh. Very strange Chazal. Why? Because what is the Torah Shabbal Peh? What is the oral law? Now people will tell you the oral law is the Talmud, and it's the Mishnah and the Talmud. That's not the oral law. The Rambam in his introduction to his code, the Yad HaChazaka, tells us that the oral law is Perish HaMitzvahs, the explanation of the mitzvahs. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the Torah, and it says, it should be for a sign on your hands, and to boxes between your eyes. What? What do you put on your arm? What do you put on your forehead? Where tzitzis? What's tzitzis? What do they look like? How do you make them? What is tzitzis? Sit in a sukkah. What's a sukkah? All of the mitzvahs of the Torah need explanation, or the book makes no sense. You can't come down from the mountain with a prescribed Torah Shebeksav and read it to them, explain it to them, and tell them do all these mitzvahs if you don't have a Perish HaMitzvahs, if you don't have an explanation that accompanies the written law. There needs to be an oral explanation that explains how to perform the mitzvahs. Says the Rambam, that is the oral law. And if you don't have an oral law, you don't have a Torah. You don't have a Torah Shebeksav.
But that's not in the Mishnayos and in the Talmud?
That's in the Mishnayos and the Talmud. But that's why we're saying the Mishnayos is the performance of the mitzvahs, although there are differences of opinion in the Mishnayos, because over time, differences of opinion cropped up and there was no Sanhedrin to resolve them. It's another whole long story. But the point is that the oral law immediately accompanied the written law, and ultimately Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi wrote down the Mishnah, and ultimately Rabashi and Rav Hoshaya wrote down the Talmud itself. But the point is, the oral law was given together with the written law when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai. So again, so some say that the oral law was what they refused to accept, but that doesn't make any sense. If they refuse to accept the oral law, then you might as well close the written law book and say, goodbye, Charlie. There's no way to understand it. So how could they have rejected the oral law? So I think that the pshat is as follows. At the foot of the mountain, when Moshe Rabbeinu discussed the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people, they said, Kol asher sheyatzav Hashem na'aseh v'nishma. Everything that God is going to tell us, we will do, and then we will listen. We will commit to performance before we hear the mitzvahs. That was done voluntarily. They voluntarily opted in to performing the mitzvahs of the Torah. What happens if I want to voluntarily opt out? I've opted in voluntarily. I want to opt out. It's too much. You know what? I'll keep half of them. I don't want to keep them all. I want to be a Reformed Jew, or I want to be a conservative Jew. I don't want to keep all the mitzvahs. Way too burdensome, way too much trouble. It's too... I'm going to voluntarily opt out just like I voluntarily opted in. Says Hashem, I made a covenant with you. We entered into a treaty. This is not, once you voluntarily accepted to enter into a treaty, the treaty becomes binding. You can't abrogate a treaty. You abrogate a treaty, you're breaking a holy covenant. Says Hashem, I'll put the mountain over you. He didn't put a mountain over them. It's a figure of speech. Hashem is telling them, you cannot voluntarily opt out once you entered into a solemn covenant with me to keep the Torah. That's the compelling part. The compelling part is you cannot voluntarily opt out once we committed en masse to keep the Torah as a covenant, a holy covenant. You can no longer opt out.
That's what the Muslims say.
I don't know what the Muslims
Someone that
What is
agrees to accept their...
Okay, whatever.
We also say,
So, what?
we also say, ולא לשב לענף של מרמה.
Yeah, no, we cannot opt out. That's the point of compulsion. What's the compulsion? Once we voluntarily entered into a solemn covenant with an oath and a bris and and a korban and tefillah and everything that took place at Har Sinai, done. You know, it's done. You cannot change a covenant. You can't have a one-sided breach of a covenant. It's not valid. And that's what Hashem is telling us. You cannot break the covenant. That is what's compelling. Okay.
During the story of Purim is when we voluntarily accept.
Yeah, that we'll get to also. We'll talk about Purim. Purim has many questions.
It's a re-acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that when we get to Purim. Maybe next week or the week after we'll get to Purim. Okay, we'll talk about Purim. All right, thank you all for listening. Remind me that we're just really beginning Yisro.